Is it common for younger people to pretend to have mental illnesses? Pretending to have a mental illness is a different form of mental illness. I have OCD, and when people say they are OCD about things, it annoys me. For starters, some of the conditions you wrote have a very specific criteria for a diagnosis. Like, you need to check a lot of pretty specific boxes in order to have an official diagnosis for something like bipolar disorder. If you don't meet that specific criteria, you don't have bipolar disorder. However, often people more generally call any form of mood swings bipolar. However, mood swings are not all it takes to get that diagnosis, and mood swings are pretty common for a whole variety of reasons. I mean, simple fluctuations in blood sugar can cause mood swings in some people. My guess is that a lot of people say that they have some of these mental illnesses in the very informal sense of the word, and haven't gotten an official diagnosis. Like, a lot of people diagnose themselves. Finding it difficult to pay attention during a boring meeting does not mean someone has ADHD. Being particular about your surroundings does not mean you have OCD. Having mood swings does not mean you are bipolar. Being sad that something bad happened to you does not mean you have depression. However, it has become really common to use the medical terms to describe fairly ordinary feelings. I am not sure I would call it pretending to have a mental illness. I just think it is kind of the way language has changed and people are using these words. That being said, as more people become aware and accepting of mental illnesses, more people are willing to admit their diagnosis. I'm more shocked when someone says they don't have a mental illness these days. People don't realize that you can have characteristics of a mental illness, but not the actual mental illness. And people need to realize that it's okay to have these characteristics sometimes. It's not normal to be normal all the time. Same people tend to attract each other when it comes to friendship. If you would see my group of friends, you would be here asking if there is really that much gay people there. Now, no. We just find each other because we finally can talk about our issues to someone and not being frowned on. Same goes for people with mental illness. I think it's a combo of self-diagnosis and awareness. I'm almost 50 but have recently been diagnosed with depression, ADHD and social phobia. The depression was transient but clinically diagnosed. The other two I've had my whole life, but when growing up they weren't things a fake, so weren't discussed. Maybe. But also mental health issues are more acceptable to talk about these days with the stigmas dying. It seems like there are more people with them because more people realize they exist. Don't ignore them the way we used to. And actually go get evaluated on a larger basis than the generation of, if you ain't dead then there isn't anything wrong with you, of the past. Better medicine also leads to more diagnoses. And that's not just for mental health. It's for a lot of things. Statistically 9 people isn't that improbable actually. I'm in uni in Southern California. I feel like everyone has something, whether professionally diagnosed or not, and usually on meds if they can be. And they talk about it all the time like they're proud. And they use it as excuses for being an asshole or being flaky or whatnot. It's pretty crazy. They have mental illnesses and they're proud of it and flaunt it. It's weird. Collecting mental disorders like Pokemon cards. Way more self-diagnosis nowadays. OMG, I totally have 3 out of 11 symptoms. I have this. It's worth noting that the options aren't just was diagnosed by a professional or is faking for attention led to a self-diagnosis. Even if someone doesn't have a disorder, they can genuinely believe they have it, because just like any health thing, symptoms are complicated and overlapping. You can be wrong about what is wrong with your mind or body, even if your attempts to figure it out are measured and reasonable. Secondly, while mental health issues are getting a lovely reprieve from stigma, struggling with non-clinical mental health problems like generic stress is still widely seen as weak, or even as almost disrespectful to people who have real diagnosed issues. I have friends who expressed relief when they got mental illness diagnoses, because in their minds the only options were that they had a clinical problem and were doing the best they could, or they didn't have a mental illness and were pathetic losers who just couldn't cope with life. There still isn't a lot of respect given to struggling with day-to-day life. So I hold a lot of grace for people who use terms that seem incorrect to me. Misuse of terms like anxiety or panic attack is rarely duplicitous or malicious, and is often the only way people know to respect their own hardships. Also, self-diagnosis varies a lot. Personality disorders are very difficult to diagnose without a professional a fake. But it doesn't take a genius to figure out, I hate myself and have no interest in anything, and it takes me an hour to put on my shoes. I probably have depression. Can you misdiagnose yourself for things like depression or anxiety? Sure. Can you accurately diagnose yourself? Absolutely. And finally, none of us know what's going on in someone else's head. If someone says they have a mental illness, odds are they're having some sort of difficult time. Be kind, be gentle, and understand that there will always be people you just don't understand. It's because the internet's made it a trend for stupid people my age to self-diagnose essentially, without going to an actual doctor. Ask them when they got diagnosed and I bet they look stupid. To get mental health services through insurance, a diagnosis is required. So pretty much anyone who seeks therapy has to get assigned a diagnosis of some sort, which probably inflates numbers. I think a lot of people also self-diagnose to give their feelings credence, social cash. A lot of it is more diagnosis and less stigma about receiving treatment. To a lesser extent, I'm sure there are people fibbing about it for sympathy or for whatever dumb reason. No. Is it normal for most people born 70-50s to pretend they don't? Yes. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they all have issues. It's pretty easy to qualify as having an anxiety disorder, and young people just spent 2 years without socializing in a normal way, and it makes sense to me that they would struggle en masse now. I think most people have depression at this point, and anxiety levels are through the roof since COVID. No. It has always been much more common than most people realize. The difference is it has less stigma, and that is a good thing. It is probable that more have mental illnesses than not, if they have fostered an open, accepting atmosphere. That is why they're comfortable sharing details about this subject with one another. I don't know about pretending or not, but it seems like most every story you read on Reddit includes a listing of all the mental issues. The op has, I'm a bipolar, schizophrenic person suffering from depression, ADD and ADHD who was raised in a strict conservative Christian household. If I tie my shoes, am I a racist? That seems to be how most of the posts go here.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.